All right, so before we begin, I would just like to state for the record that today is February 18th, 2022, and my name is Ben Bauman. I'm here in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm speaking via phone with Tracy Boatwright, who is also in Indianapolis, Indiana, and we're doing an interview for the Indiana Legislative Oral History Initiative. So just starting off, when and where were you born?
July 7th, 1942,
Okay.
in Marion, Indiana.
And what were your parents' names?
Mark and Mildred Boatwright.
And where was your family from before Indiana?
Well, my dad was from Iowa originally, and then my mother was from here in Marion,
Oh, okay. Sure.
or in Marion.
What did your parents do for a living?
My dad was in sales, worked for Hamilton Harris Tobacco Company, and then also for sold cookies and crackers.
Interesting. Okay. Did you have any siblings?
Yes. Yeah, 3.
Okay. How would you describe your childhood overall?
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah.
So what was so great about it? What did you like best?
Well, it was a kind of a typical Hoosier boys growing up, you know.
Yeah.
Had great parents. My dad was very involved in, he used to play what we called pickle
Okay.
every evening when he got home from work, and that made me the ball player that I was later in my life.
Yeah.
I had good hands, and it was all because of my dad taking the time to work with me.
Yeah. That's great. Who would you say then were the most influential people in your childhood? Your parents, I guess?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And what did you know about your family's political views growing up as a kid?
No, not that much. They used to joke and laugh about the fact that my mom always said Dad was a Republican and that Mom was a Democrat, so
Oh, okay.
they kind of canceled each other out.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So it was, I guess, a pretty mixed family then politically. So,
Yeah.
what schools did you attend growing up?
I went to Fremont, which was in North Marion, and then I went to Evans, and then McCullough, and then Marion High School.
Okay. Did you have any favorite subjects in school?
Not really.
Were you involved in any sports teams or extracurriculars?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was a wrestler for all 3 years I was in high school, and played baseball for the Giants, and I played and I ran cross country.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Did you have much awareness about like the state of Indiana or what it meant to be someone from Indiana growing up?
No, not too often much.
Okay.
I never thought about it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Did you go to college?
No, never did.
Okay. So what did you do right after you finished high school?
Went to work in a factory no
Oh,
fiber.
interesting. Okay. So, how did you start to get involved in politics then?
Through the fire department, I was the union president for our firefighters union, and we always used to talk about we need to get some people involved in the city council, and some of the guys on the department wanted to run somebody for every office. And I told them, I said, no, I don't think that'll work, because the people of the city will realize what you're trying to do is to take over.
Yeah.
And I said, we just need to get one or two people to run for city council. And so I became that guy, and I was the leading vote getter in the city when I ran the first time and every time thereafter. And, was just very fortunate.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So, how did you get involved with the fire department initially?
I drove a beer truck on my, and I worked with some guys on the fire department that, they used to tell me these stories about saving a little child from a fire and that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
And it just, I always thought of myself as kind of a tough guy, and I thought, boy, that's for me. I mean, I could do that.
Yeah.
And so I went to my dad, and my dad had known Ray Burns was the mayor back then, and I asked Dad, I said, Dad, would you go see Ray Burns and see about getting me on the fire department? He said, sure. So he went to talk to Ray, and Ray said, yeah, we can do that. And so he put me on the fire department.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I guess you worked a few different jobs then before you came to the fire department, and
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I'd been in the service and been to Vietnam, and
Oh, wow.
I'd worked a lot of construction jobs and factory and things like that.
Interesting. So when when did you I guess how did you get involved with the Vietnam War? Were you drafted, or did you enlist at some point, or?
No, I was drafted.
Okay. And what were you doing at the time when you were drafted?
Just working construction
Okay.
in Marion.
How old were you?
24,
Okay.
almost 25.
Yeah. And so,
I was pretty old to be drafted, but
yeah.
I was married, but my wife and I, Jenny, and I did not have any children at that time.
Okay.
And so they were drafting married people with no kids.
Oh, okay.
That's how I got lucky enough to get involved in that.
Yeah, yeah. So when did you get married then?
1963.
Okay. And so when you found out you were drafted, I guess, were you just like shocked, or?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Okay. And so how long did you serve in Vietnam?
Only about 7 months.
Okay.
They sent me and my brother. I served with my brother. He's gone now. He passed away about 5 years ago. But we both got drafted together on the same day. Spent 2 years together, side by side in the service. And our bunks were right beside each other, and
Yeah. Wow.
I always just thought how difficult that was on my mom and dad.
Sure.
You know, that we could have been killed by one mortar.
Yeah.
Sleeping side by side in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then my other brother was Terry. He was in Germany in the military. And my brother-in-law, Ralph, was in the Marine Corps at the same time.
Wow.
We were in there at the same time.
Wow. Yeah, so, geez, a lot of family members then were in the military.
Yeah, yeah.
So, after you came back from Vietnam, did you have any particular career goals in mind, or were you still trying to figure out what you wanted to do, and then eventually you figured out the fire department thing?
Yes, just like I said, I got to talking to these guys, and I thought how interesting that sounds and how exciting, and so that's when I pursued the fire department and was lucky enough to get selected.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you have any children?
Yeah, 3.
Oh, okay. Cool. And so when you first got interested in state politics, how much influence did your family have on your decision to start to get involved?
Well, they were very supportive of you know, anything that I ever wanted to try to do in that regard. And,
Yeah.
but it just, yeah, I remember my youngest daughter, she said, "Daddy, I don't think I'm going to like it because you're going to be gone so much." And I told her, I said, "Honey, I'm gone a lot now. You know, I work on the fire department for 24 hours, and I was on the city council at that time, and
Yeah.
and I had a lot of meetings, and I said, it won't be much different than, you know, what I'm doing now."
Right.
And so she was okay with that. And
Yeah. Sure. So when you started to get more and more involved with politics, what shaped your political outlook?
my labor background, you know, I was a Democrat, and when I first went down there and talked to them about running, the Democrats are all excited about me, and I had a guy, his name was Bill Schreiber,
Yeah.
and he called me and said, "Tracy, I understand that you can dive deeper and come up drier than any Democrat in Grant County, and we want to talk to you about running for the legislature."
Okay.
Boy, my head got about as big around as a basketball. I couldn't believe that they wanted me to run for the state legislature.
Yeah. That is funny. And so when you decided to run, did you have any key issues or legislation that you were focused on, or were you just kind of taking it one step at a time?
Yeah, just a step at a time.
Yeah.
All of the Democrat issues, you know, right to work and
Yeah.
different things that the Democrats were trying to get done and get defeated. And
Sure. Did you look up to any political figures in the country or state when you were getting involved in politics?
Evan.
Yeah, I think Evan Bayh
Oh, okay.
was the biggest one.
Yeah. So what was it like running a campaign?
Well, it was very different than anything I'd ever done before. You know, you had to raise money almost constantly.
Yeah.
And that was new to me and very what's the word I'm trying to think of? Very intimidating.
Yeah.
You know, to do that.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine that would be pretty unique experience for someone who's just getting started, and here's a campaign you have to run. Yeah. Did you have like a strategy at all that you kind of formulated, or were you just kind of getting lots of help from the party to help you figure out what to do? And
a lot of help from the party, and then a lot of help from the firefighters.
Yeah.
You know, not only my own local union, but the Annapolis firefighters supported me a great deal financially and helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know, if it wouldn't have been for them, why I couldn't have afforded to do that on my own.
Yeah.
And
yeah, political campaigns are pretty expensive, I guess. So.
Oh yeah. I couldn't believe how expensive, you know, that it was. And
yeah. Do you remember how much money you had to raise for your campaign?
The first time that I ran, seemed like it was like $35,000 or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Do you remember who your opponent was?
Yeah. It was back then. There were 2-member districts, and it wound up being myself and Pete Beck
Okay.
running against Ralph Duckwall and Eric Turner.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and we beat both of them.
Wow.
And I had, unusually, I had worked for and supported Eric Turner when he was a Democrat.
Oh, okay.
And then he became a Republican, and then I ran against him and beat him.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. What did you think of the election process? Did it seem pretty good, or?
No, I didn't. I didn't care for politics that much, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed the people part of it.
Right.
I never will forget when I first got elected. You know, I got down there and I thought, oh, these people are all Republicans over here on this side of the aisle, and you know, back home I'd come from where we had knocked down, drag out fights with Republicans, but then as it turned out, the Republicans were some of my very dearest friends in the legislature.
Yeah. Sure. So you got along then pretty well with people on all parts of the political spectrum then?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Do you think part of that was due to your upbringing with your parents being Republican and Democrat?
Yeah, I don't know. I I mean, yes, I think it had to do with my upbringing, but I don't know whether it had anything to do with the fact that, my dad was a Republican and my mom was a Democrat.
Oh, okay.
None of that was ever discussed at our house.
Yeah. Sure. So how did you feel when you first found out that you got elected?
Oh, I was totally elated. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And the same way when I lost 6 years later,
Yeah.
I was just devastated.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Did you feel like you had a good chance of winning when you were running in the election?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, did you change campaign strategies over the course of the elections, the different elections in your career, or was it basically the same type of campaign?
No, it was basically the same.
Okay. What were you thinking when you walked into the State House for your first day as an elected official?
Oh, I was just totally intimidated. It was a wonderful, wonderful thing, and such a pride in what we'd accomplished, and it was very different.
Yeah. What were your expectations for the legislative process?
Well, when I first got there, I didn't know. I didn't know what that was going to be,
Yeah.
Being new to it and all. But you catch on, after a while.
Sure.
And like I said, when I first got there, I thought, a lot of those people were my enemies, when in actuality, some of the Republicans became my very best friends.
Yeah.
That I had in the legislature.
Yeah, that's really neat. Did you have people that kind of served as political mentors for you that kind of helped you figure out the process of being a legislator?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were there any particular people that you remember that were exceptionally helpful, or?
Yeah, Roland Weber. Roland was a Democrat from Anderson, and very involved in union and that kind of thing. And
yeah.
He was a big help to me.
Okay. How did you keep track of the needs and wants of your constituents?
Well, you have people that work for you, I can't think of what they were called now. Assistants, that help you keep track of legislation and
yeah, okay.
They kept that stuff straight for you, and about interviews and things like that you had to do. And
right. Did you ever have people stopping you in grocery stores or anything like that, asking you questions about legislation, or?
Oh yeah, certainly. And the same way, like in a bar, drinking a beer, and I had a lady tell me that she was very frustrated because she couldn't get any help with her, what do you call what a divorcee gets from her husband. But she was complaining about that, and So I took her name and her number and told her I'd look into it and see what I could try to help her with. And
Yeah.
after she left, some of the guys that I was sitting there with said, "Don't you get tired of that? Don't you get tired of people coming up to you in a bar while you're trying to enjoy a beer?" And I said, "No, that's what I got elected for, was
Yeah.
to help people.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for." I never will forget, I had an old boy that he couldn't get the title to his boat straightened out, that he was running into a lot of red tape. And so I made a phone call or two, and about a day or two later, he had his boat title in the mail. Those things just really make you feel great, make you feel like you've accomplished something when you're able to help people like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely, I guess, fulfill the purpose of your position to help those constituents. Yeah. Do you remember the first bill that you sponsored in the General Assembly?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I sure don't.
No worries, that's fine. What were the regular interactions like between different members of the General Assembly?
Well, it was a very congenial group, and we all got along good and had lunch together a lot of times and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And but a lot of it, you had to kind of stroke people's egos a little bit to try to get some things done that you wanted.
Yeah.
And but it was interesting.
So what's an example of having to sort of, talk with people and to get some type of deal done with them on legislation?
An example of that?
Yeah, do you have any examples that come to mind of like having to sort of, work with people in a way that kind of makes them feel good so you can get some legislation done?
Yeah, not that I can think of, not particularly.
Yeah, okay. That's fine.
Anyone.
What differences were there between members of the House and Senate?
Well, we always joked about the Senate. Always thought they were the House of Lords.
Yeah, okay.
They were better than us. And because they were elected for 6 years.
Right.
And we were elected for 2. And they just all kind of had the idea that they were a little above us and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so they felt a little
still,
superior.
I mean, a lot of them were very, very dear friends. That I never will forget Bob. Oh my goodness, I can't think of his last name. He was the head of the Senate Republicans.
Bob Garton?
Garton. And he called me. I was on my way home. He called me on my car phone and said, he always called me my fire marshal. How's my fire marshal?
Okay.
And because I was, at that point, had been then reappointed as Indiana State Fire Marshal.
Yeah.
And I so appreciated the fact that somebody as important as he was, for him to take the time to call me personally to let me know about a certain bill that we'd been working on, that he wasn't going to be able to hear it or something, or wasn't going to be allowed to go forward.
Yeah.
And I just appreciated that so much that he took the time out of his busy schedule to call me personally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess also since he's from the opposite party than you were, then
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. How difficult was it to get a bill passed in the General Assembly when you served?
Well, sometimes very difficult. I fought the fireworks law for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Trying to get that changed. Never was really successful in getting it changed the way I thought it should be. But in other situations, sometimes, it was very easy to get a bill passed and get it through, all the way through, both houses and that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. So this was about like illegal fireworks then? That was the legislation?
Yeah. Yes.
And so what was the issue exactly that was happening? People were like selling illegal fireworks and they were like causing some fires in the city, or what was going on?
Yeah, exactly. And I just, I kept pointing out the fact that people were getting hurt and injured and killed, and I stood up before the House and I said, there was a beautiful little 5-year-old girl that got part of her face blown away by a mortar, and I said, how many more people does it take? How many more little girls does it take to have that happen to before you folks realize what I'm trying to tell you?
Yeah.
And didn't do any good.
Wow. Now, I think I read when doing some research on you that, like, you had mentioned something in the newspaper about how lobbyists you felt kind of played a big role in fighting your legislation to regulate fireworks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
of course, that was their job.
Right. Right. Of course. So, what arguments were they making then against your proposed legislation?
Oh, it's the American way. It's the 4th of July and the grand old way we celebrate the 4th in our country, and how much they always used to talk about how much the fireworks industry had given to the fire service, and because they had a lot of the proceeds from fireworks sales were coming back to fire departments, and so they were just pointing out different things like that.
Yeah. And so what would your legislation have done then? Would it have just limited certain fireworks, or was it just to get rid of all illegal fireworks that are being sold?
Yeah, all illegal fireworks, yeah.
Okay, and how are these fireworks coming into the state in the first place? How are they being brought in?
By the industry.
Okay, so they're taking illegal fireworks and selling them?
Oh, yeah.
And getting away with it? Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm surprised that you even needed to have to try to create legislation if it was already illegal.
Yeah. You would have thought so.
Wow, okay. So when it came to legislation, how did you go about trying to gather support for a bill?
Well, amongst your colleagues in the House, or the House and the
Yep.
Senate, you just talk to them one-on-one whenever you got the chance, and try to convince them of your argument, and
Did you find that process to be difficult, or was it, or just depend on the issue, I guess, or?
yeah, it would depend on the issue. Yeah.
And when you're kind of recruiting people for a bill, was this happening usually in and out of the state house, or was this something that was typically like in the hallway or in committee meetings, or?
All of those.
All of them, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had different parties and things that the companies would have, and we'd go to those, and you'd get the opportunity to talk to other legislators.
Yeah.
At that time, and talk to them about your bills.
Okay. Sure. Did you have a pretty good sense of how people would vote prior to actually voting on a bill?
Yeah, and really, if you were a good legislator, you knew that ahead of time. You'd keep a cheat sheet or a scorecard as to who was supporting you and who was opposing you and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess try to keep track as much as you can. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had some people lie to me. They'd tell me, said, "Tracy, I'm going to vote for your fireworks bill," and but then I found out later that they somebody went up and got them.
Okay.
And brought them down to the meeting, so they'd have to vote no against my bill. And they tell you later, I'm sorry, but that was what I had to do. And
yeah. Okay. Interesting. So was this because of lobbying influence on them, or?
Yeah, mostly.
Okay, so they were trying to protect their own campaign, I guess, financially, so they didn't want to go against an organization that was, helping fund their campaign. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. How influential was party leadership when it came to getting a bill passed?
Oh, very helpful. Mike Phillips was the Speaker of the House and the head of our Democrat Party, and he was very helpful and very persuasive, and he could do some arm twisting, buddy.
Yeah. Okay.
He told me when I was being considered for the Indiana State Fire Marshal's job, he had tried to help me get that position, and so I was told later that they weren't going to give me the top job. They'd give me the second job. And so Mike came to me and said, "Tracy, don't you want that fire marshal's job?" And I said, "Yeah, Mike, I do." He said, "Then by God, you're going to have it." And he got it done.
Yeah. Wow, okay. Do you remember any bills that you got passed that you worked with a Republican on?
well, most all of them that you got passed, you would have had to have had some Republican support.
Okay.
If it didn't, well, it didn't go anywhere,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
You had a bill that just had Tracy Boatwright and 3 other Democrats on it.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it wouldn't move on.
So it was crucial then to have, bipartisan support to a certain extent.
Well, yeah.
Was the same for the Republican Party? They need to have a Democrat then on their bill when you served?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So I guess it must have been a pretty close session in terms of the breakdown between Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah, you mean as far as numbers?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. In fact, one year we were tied 50-50.
Yeah.
And they had dual speakers, Mike Phillips and Paul Manweiler, and Paul would be the speaker one day and Mike would be the speaker the next day, and it was very interesting.
Yeah, I bet. So how well did you think the General Assembly functioned when it was split like that?
Surprisingly, we got along pretty well.
Yeah. That's good. So
Yeah.
I guess then being forced to make compromises in a 50-50 session, I guess, kind of helped the General Assembly to a certain extent function?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. What would you say were the most controversial legislative issues when you served?
Oh. Well, for me, it was fireworks.
Yeah, okay.
And I can't
That's fine.
really think of something that jumps out at me.
Yeah. That's okay. Was there a particular piece of legislation that sort of took the most time when you served in the General Assembly?
I can't remember, as far as
Yeah, that's okay.
time.
Yeah.
One of the bills that I'm most proud of having passed was the defibrillator bill, that now you find them in police cars and ambulances, and they're saving people's lives and that kind of thing. I was the author of that bill.
Oh, okay.
And so that was one of the most influential pieces of legislation that I was ever involved in.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Okay. What would you say was the biggest challenge you had to overcome when you served in the General Assembly?
Biggest challenge?
Yeah.
Knowing so much about so many different things was pretty monumental to me. I carried bills that they'd take me somewhere and we'd have a meeting and they'd sit down and go through all of the cons and the differences and that kind of thing, and then I'd go before the House and explain it and get it passed.
Yeah.
And but that was pretty mind blowing, to have that you knew nothing about previously.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose that you kind of have to do that a lot serving because you're exposed to so many different bills and stuff about different aspects
Oh, yeah.
of life and society.
You know, being a city kid, I never knew much of anything about farming or farming issues.
Yeah.
But my seatmate that sat right next to me, Pete Beck, was from Oak Hill and knew all about farming, everything there was to know about it. And anytime I had a question about, Pete, explain this to me about, what does this mean and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's how you get by,
Sure. Yeah, makes sense. So thinking about some of the specific legislation that you worked on, a few other things that I read about, you had some legislative work on like bills for veterans.
Yes.
Can you tell me a bit about that?
Well, I always was very supportive of bills for veterans, being one myself.
Yeah.
And the same way with fire service and firefighters and that kind of thing. But I lost my train of thought.
No, that's okay.
What'd you ask me?
Yeah, I was just asking about the legislation that you worked on for veterans and what you tried to do.
Oh, yeah. I was one of the 4 chairmen on the Veterans Committee, and we passed a bill that supported veterans and that kind of thing.
Okay.
And I just was very interested in those types of issues.
Yeah. I also saw that you had worked on some workplace safety bills. Do you remember that?
Not anything that jumps right out at me.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, okay. What about, I know that one seemingly controversial issue that was going on when you served was about casino legislation in like Lake County. Do you remember that?
Yes.
So what was happening and what was your role in that?
Well, they were the Democrats, particularly the Democrats from Lake County and up in that area, were very trying hard to find support for casinos up in Lake County. And I remember one time Mike or Elaine Rogers.
Yeah.
She went to the microphone and spoke about how important casinos were to Gary and to her community, and she almost cried. She was so believed in it so strongly.
Yeah.
And then Mike Young, who is now a senator, Mike got up and kind of chewed her ass out and told her that, you don't know what you're talking about, and casinos are not the answer to your problem, and just really lit into her.
Wow.
And so I went to the microphone and I chewed his ass out, and I said, this lady come up here, and she about cried because she believes in this issue so much, and I just really let him have it.
Yeah.
After I asked the speaker, Mike Phillips, they had a thing called I won't be able to think of the term now. It's where you
Like. Like punish someone or something in the party, or?
No, it's when you speak badly about another legislator.
Oh, okay.
But there's a certain term that they use.
Okay.
And I asked him, I said, Mike, I can't think of the words I'm trying to think of.
Okay, I guess you asked if like you kind of like broke the party rule or something like that to speak out against someone, or?
Yeah, it's a Robert's rule.
Well, if you got to be careful about what you say about a fellow legislator.
Yeah.
But anyway, I asked Mike Phillips. I said, Mike, did I go too far with my raising hell with him? And he said, no, you came awful close, but you didn't go too far. And
wow.
Still, for the life of me, I can't think of what that term was I'm trying to think of.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Let's see. I also saw there was some incident where, like, someone had a heart attack in, like, the house, and you helped resuscitate that person?
Yeah, that was Roland Weber, my good friend. The guy I was telling you about that had kind of held my hand a little bit when I was newly elected.
Yeah.
I was out in the hall with some constituents, and somebody come out and yelled at me and said, Tracy, Rollins had a heart attack and he's down on the floor in there. So I went running in and I could see that he wasn't breathing. I checked his neck and I started giving him mouth to mouth.
Yeah.
And Bob Alderman from Fort Wayne, a Republican, started giving him chest compressions. And when the paramedics came and they took over, and then later the doctor got there, and I asked the doctor later that evening at the hospital, I said, Doc, I wasn't sure I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And he said, you did everything just right. If you hadn't helped him, he wouldn't be alive today.
Wow.
So, yeah, and we saved his life, and he lived for 10 more years after that.
Wow.
And, yeah, it was a heck of a story.
Wow, that's crazy. Jeez.
When I got done, I cried like a baby.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It was just so emotional.
Sure. Yeah, that's pretty intense. I imagine that would have a big effect on anyone who had to go through a situation like that. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, jeez. So thinking now, I guess, in the big picture about your career as a legislator, how would you summarize your time overall?
Oh, it was very, very rewarding. Just an unbelievable time in my life, that I had the opportunity to do that and be involved in that and be involved in some of those issues that I was involved in. And it was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Everybody always told me that said, Tracy, you'll be a legislator as long as you want to be. And then after 3 terms, I got defeated. And I'll tell you, it destroyed me.
Yeah.
I sat in my recliner at home for 3 weeks and couldn't get out of my chair.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Just didn't want to do anything or go anywhere or talk to anybody or anything.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you were just really passionate about being a legislator and I guess totally shocked that you could lose it.
Yeah.
Yeah. understandable. Do you have a favorite story about your career in the General Assembly?
Well, I guess saving Roland Weber's life would be the biggest thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a huge one, yeah.
And then also, getting bills passed like the defibrillator bill and that's saving people's life today. That is important to me, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
That I was able to do that.
Yeah, definitely. What lessons did you learn from your experiences in the General Assembly?
Lessons. Well, that you have to treat people. And that's kind of the way I've tried to live my life. You treat people the way you'd like to be treated.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that you have to learn at the legislature is
Sure.
you want to treat people the way you'd like to be treated.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have any regrets from your time as a legislator?
No.
Okay. What advice would you give to future legislators or even current legislators?
Well, there needs to be, and this holds true for Congress as well, but they need to start treating people more like I said, treat people the way you'd like to be treated.
Yeah.
But the divisiveness and the fighting and that, it doesn't benefit anybody.
Yeah.
And one thing that's wrong now with the legislature is, the Republicans have such massive numbers over the Democrats, and not only the House but the Senate, and the Democrats can't do anything, and the Republicans know it, and so they're not very willing to try to work together.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it was 50-50 and back to 52-48 and that kind of thing, well, they had to work. They had to work with the Democrats, and that makes for a much better situation all around.
Sure. Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot less motivation to work with the other party if you're very dominant in your control of the General Assembly. So.
Yeah.
What, in your opinion, is the most important work of the Indiana General Assembly?
Taking care of their constituents. Taking care of the people that elected you and got you into that position.
Yeah. Sure.
That was the most rewarding thing to me, I think. And like I said, when I talked about a woman coming up to me and talking to me in a bar about that, and hell, I didn't care. That's like I told whoever was sitting there with me. I said, that's what I got elected for, was to try to help people.
Yeah. Part of the job.
Yeah.
What would you say the public doesn't know about how the Indiana General Assembly works?
Well, the behind the scene things that go on, that they don't know anything about. And,
Yeah. Now, I know we talked about the role of lobbying on your firework legislation. How prominent was lobbying in general in the Indiana General Assembly when you served? How big of an issue would you say it was?
oh, it's very, very big.
Okay.
Like if you look at the end of the year when they release the amounts of money that the big companies spend on their lobbyists, some of them's over $1 million a year.
Yeah.
And that's a huge, huge part of it.
So I guess a lot of money was spent to influence politicians and get them to support certain industry views on things. And
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had lobbyists that were friends of mine that would tell me, Tracy, I understand if you can't support me on this and that kind of thing. Or sometimes even I've had them advise me, Tracy, you can't support this, even though it was something that they were pushing.
Yeah.
They knew that if I come out and voted for that it would hurt me back home in the legislature in the election.
Yeah. So what did you do in those situations?
I did what I knew I had to do because they were right. When they said, you can't support me on this, and I understand that.
Yeah. So I guess then, like when you serve as a legislator, because the way the system is set up with the influence of lobbyists and helping fund campaigns and helping, I guess, generate voter turnout for you, you're to a certain extent, I guess, many or all members of the legislature are kind of handicapped to a certain extent to what the lobbyists who help fund their campaigns want, because they have such a huge role, I guess, in getting you elected in the first place.
I'm not sure I understand.
I was just saying that, I guess then, all members of the General Assembly have that issue where, they're pressured by lobbyists to vote a certain way if they want to keep their spot in the General Assembly. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. How would you say politics has changed in Indiana over the course of, your career and looking into how politics functions today in the state?
Well, like I said before, one of the worst things that's going on is the massive Republican I can't come up with my words today for some reason.
No, that's like the supermajority that they have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big problem.
Sure.
And
how did that come about, you think?
Well, just over time, when I first got elected, Democrats were in the minority in the House. Let's see, what was the numbers? 58 Republicans, I think, to 42 Democrats.
Okay.
And in that first year that I was elected, we gained 9 seats. And then after that, we just started gaining a few more every year until we got it up to 50-50. And one time or two, we finally got ahead, 52 to 48.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But it works better, I think, when it's close like that. When there's an even, or somewhat even number of legislators on both sides of the aisle.
Okay. Yeah. So, I guess the final question that I have for you, thinking about like the issues that you see with how the General Assembly has changed over time, and given your experience in state politics, what would you want Hoosiers to know about sort of their role and influence when it comes to state politics and the General Assembly?
Well, that's kind of like a wish list.
Yeah.
You can say, you people ought to stop and think about before you just blindly go in and elect 70 Republicans.
Yeah.
But you ought to think about how important it is for it to be a little more equal and fair to get good legislation. But that's not going to happen. It's going to have to be something else that changes that.
Yeah. To what extent do you think like gerrymandering has an effect on the distribution of Republicans and Democrats in the General Assembly?
Oh, it's huge.
Okay.
It's huge. It's that needs to stop, but I got to quite honestly say that if the Democrats were ahead if they had the big numbers, they probably wouldn't listen to what I'm trying to say either.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, it just kind of depends on who's in power. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a part of the game.
Yeah. Given all the time you've spent in Indiana throughout your life, what enduring qualities would you say the people of Indiana still have?
Well, they're honest, hardworking, just good, salt of the earth people, and for the most part, being a Hoosier is something to be proud of.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think people understand that.
Sure. All right. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. Is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you wanted to mention, or did we cover it all? Or
I think we covered it pretty good.
Great. All right. Well.
Alrighty.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking part in this project. It was really cool and interesting to hear, all about your experiences, and I really appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome.
All right. Well, I will be in touch and talk to you later. So.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
All right. Bye-bye.